Welcome to or welcome back to How to Change the World, the podcast that equips change makers with the lessons, tools, and inspiration to drive meaningful impact. I am your host, Catherine Alonso. Have you ever stopped in the grocery aisle and really looked at the label on your coffee or your chocolate or your wine or your soap? Most of us just glance at the price, maybe the flavor. You probably just reach for the brand you get week in, week out without giving it too much thought. But tucked away on so many of those packages is a small black and blue symbol, a person in motion. It's a half circle of blue and yellow, the Fairtrade mark. If you see it, you will probably recognize it. That little symbol tells a much bigger story. It's the story of farmers and workers around the world who are paid fairly for their crops, whose rights are protected and whose communities can thrive because consumers, people like you, made a different kind of choice at the checkout line. Fair trade isn't just about trade. It's about reimagining what fairness in a global economy can look like and what happens when everyday purchasing power becomes a force for justice and change. My guest today, Dr. Arisbe Mendoza, is one of the people leading that transformation. As the Director of Global Impact at Fairtrade International, she oversees strategies that touch everything from sustainable agriculture to gender equity to digital supply chains. With a PhD in agricultural economics and more than 15 years of experience, she spent her career proving that change can start with a seed, a cup of coffee, or a bar of chocolate and ripple across continents. In our conversation, Arisbe and I talk about what it really takes to build an ethical global market, why October's Fair Trade Month is such an important moment of recognition, and how each of us can take small, tangible actions from choosing fair trade certified products to joining community initiatives that add up to systemic change. So the next time you reach for your morning coffee, take a moment to think about everything that went into making it and the power you have to influence that process. Let's dive into my conversation with Dr. Arisbe Mendoza of Fairtrade International. Dr. Arisbe Mendoza, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Catherine. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today.
I am so excited to talk to you and really appreciative of your time. So, Arisbe, let's start with you. Can you tell me a little about your role at Fairtrade International and what it is you do there?
Yes, thanks. I think I like to give a bit of the context of who I am, what is linked to my role. So generally, I grew up believing that leadership was, for me, kind of not necessarily a title, but was about impact. And the combination of me with my identity, I'm a proud Mexican, I'm a mother of an amazing daughter and the Global Impact Director since 21 in Fairtrade International. I carry this belief of what we do should be impactful since then, in everything what I'm doing. So my path to Fairtrade International, in terms of what I'm doing here, it wasn't just a career move that you think, okay, I found a job and I came here. It was really a drive. And I have always believed what I said before, that leadership should create real impact. And to me, this means really working where values and the action meet. And this is where I landed and I found here in Fairtrade International. One thing that is actually interesting for me is I grew up in a house where I often heard adult conversations on workers' rights and decent working conditions. I didn't at that time know that was something, I thought that was ordinary conversations. And my dad was promoter of the first trade union on the island that I'm coming from. And we were also supporting refugees from Caribbean islands. But for me as a kid, I thought that was totally normal. So I never realized that was something that until I was an adult that I thought that not everyone was doing. But I grew up with that sense. And later, when I did my undergraduate studies, I had the opportunity to live in a Mayan village in the south of Mexico, where I work with women artisans and smallholder farmers. And that work also showcased the urgent need to understand, to improve agricultural productivity and have better prices for the produce of the farmers. And my journey continued and took me to Brazil when I continued my research and my work. And again, I was working there in an area that was quite deforested in the Amazon, in the Brazilian Amazon. And similarly to the challenges in Mexico, it was also a need to work more with supply chain integration and market information for fair prices. So when fair trade came into my life, it was literally a natural transition. A couple of things here that I think made that difference is that fair trade is really about dignity, equity, and giving voice to those that are unheard. And that's why we have unfair trading conditions, let's say. So joining for me fair trade at that time, back in, talking a bit more than 10 years, allow me to align my purpose with a global mission to literally make trade fair and empower communities. One particular thing that I must disclose, I'm particularly interested in women and girls in the area of my work. And generally speaking, I definitely believe that when we can change systems that shape our world, we really create a space for authentic leadership everywhere. So I think this is something that is kind of nice from that experience I had and what made me join Fairtrade.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. And what I really loved is what you said at the beginning, which is the relationship between impact, values, and leadership. And I love that you shared kind of your story and how you figured out what you cared about, and then being able to find a home in Fairtrade International to be able to carry that mission out professionally. I think that's just so powerful, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Was there, I have to ask you, because when you tell it like that, it sounds so beautiful and linear. Was there a time along your journey that you thought, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm not sure how this is going to drive impact? Have there been moments of doubt for you?
I think that challenge came to me when I was a teenager, getting ready to the university. And the reason of this is because coming from an island that has specific areas of interest for work, it was really limiting for me. But I have this really drive to do something related to the environment, but with the social aspects. And that was a point where I thought it will be possible to have this combination, which at the beginning, when I started the university, it wasn't. I just started with the pure economics, and then I never give up. So then when I moved for the master is when I made environmental economics the subject, which then made me land where I wanted really to combine these two things. But it was a time where I really thought would be ever possible to do this at the time when I was studying. That was a bit of a challenge, to find the space and to get the scholarships to do that. But I was privileged enough. I put a lot of effort in getting those scholarships that made me be where I am now.
It's such a great example of finding the overlap of where your passions lie and what exists in the world, or what you need to create in the world to be able to carry out those passions and that personal mission. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. So turning our attention to Fairtrade International, tell what is the focus of your work there, and also just tell us a little bit about the organization and where it's come from and where it might be going.
Great. Fairtrade story, can go back to many years back. And let me summarize. And having really like a revolution in terms of how we thought about fairness in the past. And we started back in the Netherlands in response to the struggles of Mexican coffee farmers, actually, after the collapse of world coffee prices in the 80s. And that led to the first Fairtrade certification. In fact, the first coffee that was traded under the idea of Fairtrade was coming from Oaxaca and was sold in Dutch supermarkets in 1989. And after that period, Fairtrade saw many labels spring up across Europe and North America as well. And Fairtrade International then was established to unite all this because it was a rapidly growing movement. And in 1997, Fairtrade International began setting the global standards for traded products and certifying producers that were making up the fair trade supply chain as we know now. At that time, to ensure that the certification of the standards was done in an independent manner and consistent, we also separated the standard setting from the audit, which is the FlowCert, which is a subsidiary of Fairtrade International. So that was also something that happened to ensure that credibility. And today, what is interesting is that we are having more than 1,800 producer organizations that are certified fair trade across 67 countries. Wow. And there are more than 37,000 products that are traded with the Fairtrade mark, from coffee to cocoa to fresh fruits, wine and cotton. And I think that from that time that we started with only coffee to where we are now, today, what I think is still relevant is the future of fair trade is all about growth. One of the biggest opportunities I see for fair trade is really to expand the market access for producers. And this is in the heart of our mission that is still valid. That's why fair trade was created, to improve livelihoods of farmers and workers through trade. And we need to double down on this to really make the best take out the potential that we have, not in the key commodities where we have a footprint, but also exploring in others where we can have impact. What are we right now doing and focusing is also in developing our community strategy, which is really strongly focusing on put focus in terms of what can be more impactful. And we are taking leadership in fair trade for strengthening our pillar on sustainable livelihoods, which has an holistic way to look at that. It's not only about the environment and the economic models. We have a lot of pricing mechanisms, etc., but it's really understanding how the social, economic, and environmental aspects through programs really support our producers, and the producer networks in the 3 regions are implementing that.
So when I go to the grocery store and I pick up coffee or chocolate or wine or whatever it might be, and it has the little Fairtrade logo on it, what does that mean in terms of the product that I'm buying?
Right, you're talking about this logo. Yes, so
Yes.
I mean, that one is, so that means a product that you buy with our mark means that have been subject to global standards that are international, that are linked to environmental, social, and economic requirements that have been assessed and audited against that. So it's a production that was done under fair trade conditions and that was sold under fair trade conditions. So the minimum price, the fair trade minimum price plus a premium has been paid. And then you can look, I all the time encourage us as consumers, I do it, I'm biased, I do it all the time when I look for products because I want to understand where this product that I'm consuming is coming from, where it was sourced. So from that point, then you understand, you have information oftentimes on pack as well, where your product comes from, especially from coffee. I have seen many on pack information of the cooperative, where it comes from. You have different possibilities. And in our website, we all the time have information related to the impact that we have on fair trade on those products. So it's very transparent also for us as consumers if we want to look what is behind that label.
And what those, the certain amount of the fair price, if you will, that is secured when you're buying that logo, what does that mean for the farmers or the people producing that product at the other end?
Right. So that means that should be able to support to cover the cost of sustainable production that we have been seeing that is not anymore the case. And we have been developing other price mechanisms to allow to compensate for that gap, even if the price, the minimum price is paid, that sometimes is even above the market price, is not enough to cover the production, the sustainable production of that produce. So what we are working also is on models towards living income and paying differentials that then allow investments in the farms with those differentials to increase productivity and to really to work more on the sustainability of the farming. That is the key element for producers to be able to improve income. So that is the why we are, when you buy something and you pay more, is what you are expecting as well, that contribution.
I see. And so it's so fascinating to me because Fairtrade International is a brand and a company that is lots of different things. On one level, it's for many people, I think their main interaction with Fairtrade is they see the logo on the things they buy at the grocery store. And then so much extends from that in terms of how that impacts the producers of those products, but also how that in turn shapes entire communities. And I understand that that's what Fairtrade International is all about. It's about changing the fabric of communities. And so when it comes to creating that change, what does success look like for you and for the company?
Right. That is an interesting question because I think while we all the time think in the outcome, generally speaking, success is not only about that. It's especially in fair trade, it's about the process, participation, engagement, and persistence. So this real change, while we have our metrics to measure where we are progressing, real change we measure through lives that we are improving, and is driven by this collaboration and coalition work that we have with our whole fair trade system, but including also the consumers, from the producers to the consumers. And I would say something that sounds sometimes that might be like you think is just subjective, but this is sustained by hope and action. It's not just the resources, but we should never lose the hope of things and initiatives or the work that we do through trade that is something that is more tangible related to a market requires much more effort. And that's why for me persistence is critical across no matter how many years you're still, it's still relevant to still work in fair trade because the trading conditions are still unfair and we want them to be less unfair.
It's so funny that you should say that, Arisbe, about hope. I've been thinking about hope a lot recently because I think, honestly, my job at the moment is to create opportunities and inspiration for people working in social change to feel hope, because at the moment I think that it is very difficult for people to feel hopeful. It's harder, I should say, for people to feel hopeful than it has felt in the past. And so I've been thinking a lot about, this idea of hope and how you create hope and how you hold on to hope. And what I've come to realize is it's really a skill. And I have a keynote presentation that I give a lot. The basic sort of setup of the keynote is that the most important skill for a first century leader is the ability to respond to and prepare for change. And I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and I had this sort of internal epiphany where I thought that might be one way of putting it, but the other way of putting it is the skill actually that lies
Yeah.
within that ability to prepare for change is hope. That's what it's about. Like, the how do you develop hope, foster hope. So it's so interesting to me that you say that success for you and for Fairtrade is about the process, and that hope is at the center of that process.
Indeed, because Catherine, also I think fair trade what means is farmers and workers have a stable and dignified work. So that supports families and communities. And I think this is the key difference because having agency, being a business partner with market commercial partners is what gives that dignity in the work that the farmers do. And that part is where I think when we think at a scale, this is what we are promoting more and more with the companies that we work as well, that they engage and partner with the smallholder farmers and the workers. And it's not only about I buy from you and my supply chain is secure, but you are partnered with me in ensuring that the supply chain is sustainable for both, from the producer side to the market side. And I think how you deal with that process is where you can measure then your success.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And at the same time, I'm sure that there are misconceptions about fair trade or even ethical consumption more broadly. If there was one misconception that people hold that you wish you could clear up, what would that be?
Yes, thanks. I mean, that is a quite interesting question because you can see it from different angles. And I think one of the biggest ones is related to the expectation that by buying fair trade will solve all the problems that farmers and workers have. That is the solution. And the reality is that fair trade is kind of you, while you justify your expectation, we cannot fix all the problems by buying one chocolate or one cup of coffee. So the low prices that we have been seeing since already the beginning when fair trade started and the underinvesting in farmer livelihoods have left producers really with little to invest in improving the production and process, which increases vulnerability. And now where we are, the time that we are with climate change and pests and diseases is even exacerbating the challenges for the farmers. So I think fair trade is not, let's say, we are trying to work holistically to address these expectation, and we work in a lot of programs. So it's not about only paying the price, but it's also we work with programs that address environmental issues as well, that address sustainable production. So it's more holistic than only the price. So when we buy things as consumers, yes, we are supporting this, but it is one step to invest in and to tackle the systemic issues that we have, but not the only one. So we need to continue to support that as consumers with the understanding that it is more than one initiative that can do that change, for to address big problems.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because creating change on a global scale is absolutely no small task, right? So it isn't, like you said, it's not one thing. It's never one thing. It's never lots and lots of people doing one thing, which is, buying with intention. So how do you build a culture of change across such a large, internationally based, I think you said Fairtrade International is operating in 67 countries. So, how do you build a culture of change across such a huge international network?
Yeah, indeed. So fair trade as such as a movement is big and complex. So as a global organization, we are co-owned, which is a very interesting thing for the type of sustainability scheme that we are, because we are co-owned by 1.9 million farmers and workers. So the system is not only owned by the market side, but is also owned by the producers themselves in terms of decision making. And we are made up of 3 producer networks, regional producer networks that are located and covering Africa and Middle East, Asian Pacific, and Latin America and the Caribbean, plus 25 national organizations and marketing organizations. Like, for example, we have Fairtrade America, Fairtrade Canada, Fairtrade Foundation in the UK, and many others that are also in Europe. So all these organizations, along with Flowser, which is the main certifier of Fairtrade, are the whole movement, if you like. And while we are all responding to different market needs and demands, we know that to create that change on a global scale, we really need to engage with people on the shared mission that we have for the future. No, that means that any global strategy that we have, we need to localize the strategy through content, offer, messaging. So it really becomes the guide of the work and the change we want to see happen at different levels of the supply chain. And depending where you are, no, if you are more in a marketing organization or in a producer network. So in addition of this work that we do within the system, we also work in collaboration. We do partnership work. So the fair trade system, we want to augment and accelerate the impact by doing this engagement and coalition.
And thank you for explaining that. What are the advantages of that structure for the ultimate mission and vision of the organization?
Right. So what is the main advantage is that gives the strengthen the capacities because it's co-owned. It's a system that is co-owned by farmers and workers and by the market facing organization. So it's not is giving these what you would say this agency to the producers of taking decisions for the system that themselves are part of. That is one thing. And the other advantage that we have is because we have 3 producer networks working across the globe, the implementation of programs and support to the producer organizations is more hands-on. So it's not through third party, but it's through directly the producer networks that are working with our producer organizations that allow that. I think that is what I think it's one of the key characteristics that makes that difference in terms of the way how we work.
Well, and I love how it's tied to the very center of what you told us fair trade is all about, which is dignity, equity, and giving voice. And so that is those core values, that main mission, that main essence is echoed and represented in not only the structure but the processes that you've told us about. And it really seems that all those central concepts are sort of echoed throughout everything. Is that accurate?
Yes, because we have a fair trade code for the whole system, which also is the structure of the values that we have are implemented across the whole system in all organizations. Even if the organizations that are part of the fair trade system are independent organizations, because we work as a federation, they adhere to this fair trade code. So it's something that we are promoting in terms of this culture in the system. And that allow us, for example, to have a global strategy that we are developing together with the whole system, but then it's localized. So the parts that are for each of the members, we work with our members, then they make them more applicable to the wherever the market or in the producer networks.
And I have to ask you, Arisbe, because my lens on change making is always through storytelling and understanding how stories play a role in us creating positive change in the world. Do you see a role for stories, whether it's from farmers, businesses, consumers, in helping drive the change that fair trade's all about? And then what does that look like in action?
Yes, that is a great point because actually storytelling is a powerful medium, as you were describing, no? And who better for us to tell these more than the farmers and producer stories by the actual farmers who are on the ground living that experience. And here in Fairtrade, what we do is a lot of this storytelling is coming either through producer profiles that we have or interviews in the media as well. No, so we have that, and we want to tell Fairtrade stories through the eyes and voices of the producers themselves. And we had some years ago the Farm Diaries as well was a really beautiful documentary type that also brought these voices of the farmers directly. In addition to this, we have a nice program, which is also one of my favorites. It's called Fairtrade Ambassadors, that teaches young people in different schools and campuses through the world on what is fair trade and helps them to lead advocacy efforts for this generation that is just starting. So they have also support for projects to share knowledge and to start influencing in their own communities, and they get voluntary experience. They come to Europe, they go also to the US, to Canada, they are exposed. So this is another way where we are also bringing those voices through storytelling, basically.
Arisbe, I want to ask you a little bit more about the programs and partnerships you have with producers. But before we do that, I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. It is such a tough time for nonprofits, agencies, and changemakers. Funding is tight, capacity is stretched, and your work matters more than ever. And you need communication support that can keep up. That's why we are super excited to introduce our new suite of modular, flexible services, built to help you and your storytelling stay visible, resilient, and connected when it matters the most. Whether you need a quick messaging refresh or adaptable on-demand support, Javelina is here to help you move forward with clarity and strength. You can see this list of services and discounted prices at javelina.co/rapid-response-services. Okay, so you've shared with us the important work that Fairtrade does and how much the partnership with farmers and producers on the ground matters. What does that look like in action? How does Fairtrade collaborate with other groups, whether that's your partners, your producers, your farmers, but also communities, government, NGOs, to drive your mission forward?
Yeah, great. I think that for us, partnerships is one key area to drive impact, as I was mentioning. So this is for us, in addition to the Fairtrade system, we need to work with coalitions, collaborations, partnerships. And that's why we work closely with governments, development agencies, business, research institutes, and civil society organizations as well. No, so when we have common goals, we just engage on that to make a difference. So in 24, just thinking last year, because actually I have, in addition to the global impact team, I'm also leading the portfolio of the partnerships team. We had 58 external funded Fairtrade projects across the system, and these range from different commodities and themes. And some were funded by government funds, other from private donors. And I want to mention a couple of strategic alliances that we have. One that was recent is with International Cooperative Alliance that helps to support the sustainable and well-governed cooperatives and their communities. And because we work certifying producer organizations, this is a critical coalition or cooperation that we are having. Another one more with the focus of supporting agroecology and biodiversity is with the Center for International Forestry Research and World Agroforestry, C4ICRAF. And this is done to really expand these initiatives on more environmental issues and initiatives to support organizations as well to build on their climate resilience, collaborate on advocacy priorities related to decent livelihoods. So this is another critical one. And let me mention a third one, more focusing on social justice, which is the Global Coalitions for Social Justice. That this is more to support collective efforts to address social justice, basically deficits, and to accelerate implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Sustainable Development Goals. So this is an example of the type of partnerships and collaborations that we do when we work with closely to accelerate the impact that we have also in the system.
And what do you think are some of the ingredients of a successful partnership? When you're looking for a partner to work with, what do you know are some of the things that have to exist for this to be productive and effective on both sides?
So I think here what is interesting is that is one size doesn't fit all, right? So there are different approaches that are needed by the different partnerships that we are having. And one thing that I have learned is that we can be rigid. So we need to be flexible on how we work and respectful of the pathways of the different organizations that are also engaging with us. Because while we have the core values that we share, the pathways and the work that every organization does is different. So we need to be flexible around that. And for us in Fairtrade, the goal is always the same. We want to promote fair trading conditions and support disadvantaged producers. And our way reaching this goal is through our standards, fair trade interventions, digitalization, and this relationship building and supply chain work that we do. So it's an intentional focus that we have, and we try to be flexible in our partnerships to understand where is the sweet spot where we can do the best in terms of the collaborations.
Have you had any experiences with partners who share the same values but approach things differently?
I do. So, for example, I think we do have that with the Alliance for Cooperatives, that they have the different approach to, and they focus primarily only on the cooperatives in terms of being in a coalition of cooperatives, where our focus is strengthening the organizations and the cooperatives themselves as individual organizations. So I think, for example, the approach is different, but overall, for advocacy purposes, this is an important effort that we are doing both. They, on a wider scale, for bringing a coalition of cooperatives, and us trying to strengthen the individual capacities of the producer organizations. So that will be, for example, one way that you could say is a different way how we are addressing that, but yet we are sharing these advocacy efforts to promote the importance of working in an organized manner as a producer organization.
Arisbe, I want to ask you about the future when it comes to ethical farming, ethical producing, and fair trade. What do you think are some of the challenges, the biggest challenges that we face? And then what at the same time is giving you hope?
Right. So I think the main challenges, there are a couple of things that I kind of observe. First is the production, the agricultural production that is really threatened by all the main things or bigger things related to climate change, for example, this affecting the productivity, etc. So this is one of the biggest topics that we are trying to address. And if you sum this together with the world where we are, also with our ethical choices, how we invest in ethical consumption, that the prices of everything is going up, and when you need to decide whether you pay more or less, that really has an effect in terms of what is the type of market that we can have for the production of our fair trade producers. And this is where I think we are trying to put efforts in growing this market for the organizations while ensuring that they have elements to invest in the agricultural production, in the productivity, in reducing those risks. So this is, I think, the area. And the other things that are around this, that is the context, is the legislation. That especially in Europe, there is a lot of changes with the European Union requesting HREDD, human rights due diligence, adherence, or deforestation, EUDR. So the exports of our producers need to be also adhering to these legislations, which increases the cost of the products. So having that in mind, how we balance the fact that we need to pay for a product that we are consuming that was produced under fair trade conditions that cost more, with this other side of us as consumers trying to find a product that might be more cheaper, that we don't want to pay for that. So it's a bit of that struggle that we have, but the hope is just ensuring that as people get more information on what we are doing in fair trade, if people get informed, if they understand, if they get closer to the farmers and workers, I think you will not question much why I'm paying more. So I think it's that part.
Yeah, which links back to the stories that you were talking about, the importance
Yes.
of understanding the impact of the human lives at the other end of that coffee or the chocolate or the wine or whatever it might be.
Indeed, yes.
And hope, what gives you hope?
I think hope, for me, hope is precisely this part of not underestimating that the ordinary actions that we can take can make a big difference. And this is one of the thing I have all in mind, like small actions, big ripple effects. Choosing fair trade supports entire communities. And for one of the key things, if we are as consumers, the best way to support this is to buy fair trade certified products. And even if we say we are not solving all the problems, but every contribution counts. And that will be the thing that would make the difference, in addition to the other work that we are doing with advocacy, engaging with governments, and bringing the voice of the producers more. I'm thinking in what is the role of us as individuals, as citizens, as to be more responsible citizens of this world. No? The world is beautiful. We have still many things to do. We can do more.
I'm so glad you shared that, Arisbe, because I think sometimes we can be guilty when we think of social change and the world's problems that we want to alleviate, of thinking of it as black and white, yes and no, fixed and not fixed. And rather than thinking that something can shift meaningfully and there still be some work to be done. So as individuals, as consumers, the choices we make, it might not eradicate problems. It might not completely reverse course in any particular realm or industry, but it does make a huge difference. It moves the needle. And I think sometimes we can underestimate the importance of that needle moving because we think, well, the problem persists. And I'm really glad that you emphasized that how much impact someone's individual consumer choice at the grocery store can make.
Indeed. I mean, yes, this is one thing that I always encourage, because we think might not be enough, but it can make a big change. And so it's everyday choices for what we do, for what we buy, for what we eat, for how we behave matters. So I think that is what would be, yeah.
Arisbe, for people listening who want to make a difference in their own communities, what's one lesson from Fairtrade's journey that they could apply right away?
I like one in particular because a lot of the times when I speak with people, we tend to think that we are helping producers, and dignity and agency are the foundation of development. And Fairtrade treats producers as business partners, not beneficiaries. So this is an important part, because make sure people feel valued, not just helped. That's where it's bringing about this voice that is unheard, but with the right dignity. And I think this is one thing that oftentimes we tend to not think when we think in the work that we do to improve livelihoods, for example. No, we think that we are helping when actually the producers themselves are the agents of their own change. And that is that part that I think it's important in the messaging. Also, when we engage in the supply chain, this is one important aspect. And linked to this is the part of the fair prices that empower building producers' own future. So this is also the second thing that is linked to fair trade, that we pay more, but by paying more, we are supporting that part of the building the future of producers and workers and farmers.
Arisbe, I'm so grateful for everything you shared with us and for all of your time. Before we wrap up, I just have our quick speed round of questions for you. The first of which is, what is a great book that has informed your own change-making work?
I have to that, but the one that all the time come to my mind, and I have given to many people as a gift, and I even enrolled in one program of them, is called The Scent and the Art of Saving the Planet. If we want to understand all what is about hope, is this book, and is done by the Thich Nhat Hanh, which is a Buddhist monk. And this is an invite for change makers, especially for women leaders. This is where it really connected me, because help us to understand how we can lead with mindfulness, with compassion, how we can transform this hope, this activism that we have in a practice of being present. Because when we are present is when we can do real change. And I even joined a program that they offer. I really recommend the program, by the way. It's a great program to make this reflection. And the second one, it's shorter, but it was also very dear to me. That is a manifesto. We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, which is a very powerful manifesto on gender equity and leadership as well. It's so powerful. So those two, I would say, if I need to choose, I have more because I love reading and hearing podcasts, but I think I will leave it there.
Okay, good. I'll come to you when I need other book recommendations. And who is one change maker that has inspired you?
Okay, so all the time difficult, right? Because I think I try to think too. When I look also for some inspiration, I look often to many of the type of ways how Jacinda Ardern addressed things, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, because she was known for how she was leading with empathy, but still being very strong and having her progressive policies, etc. And the counterpart of that for me is he's a doctor called Dr. Gabor Mate, which is another, I have read already 2 books of him. And that is an inspiration for change makers to live again. I use the word empathy a lot because this empathy and self-awareness, it is important to understand that no matter where we are, we have a collective trauma that comes from our own individual traumas. And if we don't address that, it's hard to build compassionate, resilient communities. And this is where hope comes. So I think that's why the combination of the approach of him together, how Jacinda actually practiced that, it's a very interesting combination when we try to also understand how change make works, know what actually needs to happen, and also in ourselves as individuals.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. And what's a daily habit that keeps you grounded, Arisbe?
I do something that I started after COVID, or during COVID actually. I started with a practice of, it was a boot camp for mental fitness that ended up with me doing guided meditation every day. So guided meditation that can be even 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. When I explain to people how powerful is that, is just amazing, because if you make that a habit, just the pure breathing. So this is something I do every morning before getting out the bed. Just breathe if I don't have the time to do any meditation. But you can have walking meditation when you are doing your activities, because then you are starting doing when you are triggered by situations naturally. And this is something that I really recommend. I know that sounds sometimes, but yeah, meditation, you need to sit and close your eyes. Yes, but not. And I think if we use that power of just breathing, it makes a difference.
I could not agree more. And for anyone who's sort of tried meditation and it's not clicking for them, I have a yoga teacher that in parts of the yoga practice, she says, as you're breathing in, you just say to yourself, this is my inhale, this is my exhale, this is my inhale, this is my exhale. And that for me was sort of a doorway into meditation, because before I would just fall asleep.
Yes.
If you had to describe change making in one word, Arisbe, what would it be?
Oh, very difficult again, because I like to have all the time 2 things. One thing that I think in change making, and I have been reflecting a lot, Catherine, is really what is ordinary. And this comes with the thinking of ordinary leadership that becomes change making when everyday actions, as women we do it in leadership, we listen deeply. In the case of what we are doing in Fairtrade, us as consumer, make ethical choices, empower others. This is rooted on purpose, and the possibility to transform systems, relationships, and communities cannot be underestimated with our everyday actions. So I keep that as, it doesn't need to be a big thing, megaphone that you need to have to say, I'm doing change making. It's every single day that we all have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. 100%. Arisbe, I'm so very grateful for this conversation and for your time and for the work. I feel like I have learned so much in our time together, and I'm sure everybody listening has as well. How can listeners best connect with you and with the work of Fairtrade?
Excellent. Please follow our social media. We have Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we have also a wealth of information in our website. This month in particular, October, we are celebrating the Fairtrade Month. Engage in the case of the US and Canada. There is Fairtrade America and Fairtrade Canada having lots of activities where they share ways to learn, shop, and take action. They highlight a lot of the Fairtrade certified brands and promotions. And as I said, choose Fairtrade, choose impact. Everything that you can start with your shopping basket. Those decisions are really making a difference.
Wonderful. Arisbe, thank you so incredibly much.
My pleasure.
I loved that so much. I was so excited to talk to Dr. Arisbe because, for lots of reasons, because of the name of the brand and what it means, because of my own personal connections to Fairtrade, because of her role in such a large international company. And what really struck me from the conversation is so much of what she says is relevant in my own business and in the day-to-day work of the clients that we work with. When she talked about leadership as where impact and values meet, and also when she said that success is really about process, the real change is measured through the lives that we're improving. And all of those things are true. They're true for Javelina. They're true for, I'm thinking about our clients and how those concepts come up every day. What really struck me was 2 things. Yes, as a consumer, you can make incredible impact by being intentional about where you spend your time and your money. And number two, change making work is really about how you can bring your values to life on a day-to-day basis and expand that impact into the lives of other people. And that's true for a small community-based organization, and it's true for a large internationally based company like Fairtrade. And I loved that Dr. Arisbe shared this. And I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, I would love, 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 love. One question for you is, would you just send it to somebody for me? Just shoot an email or a text message or share it in the Spotify app or wherever you listen. Hey, I listened to this. I thought you might find it inspiring. Here's one thing I know for sure, that everybody working in social change, oh my gosh, I mean, everybody living today, what they need is a little bit more hope and inspiration. And if this story, if what Dr. Arisbe shared can provide that for someone today, then my job is done. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. And until next time, when I cannot wait to share another story of change with you, I hope you have a great one.